Wow, America is beautiful. Throughout history, a few figures cast as large as shadows: Christopher Columbus, whose journeys across the Atlantic Ocean in the late 15th century reshaped the world in the ways we think today. Columbus's bold expeditions were more than what they seemed. They marked a significant turning point in human civilization, sparking monumental shifts in globalization, European colonization, and the age of exploration. With each voyage, Columbus not only opened the gates to the New World, but also initiated an exchange of culture. Wow. Goods and ideas known as the Columbian Exchange. As we begin this exploration through history, we'll uncover the lasting impact of Columbus's journeys, exploring thousands of connections that connect distant lands and shape our modern world. While Christopher Columbus was one of the most controversial explorers, you cannot deny he has one of the lasting effects on the world. Join us as we reveal the legacy of one of the history's most influential figures and his remarkable voyages.
In the 15th century, Christopher Columbus embarked on a series of expeditions across the Atlantic Ocean that led to discovering new lands in Central America. His voyages marked a turning point in history, igniting Europe's engagement in new lands and helping begin the age of exploration and colonization of the Americas. However, the impact of Columbus's expeditions on the indigenous populations was significant, as he wiped out entire communities, leaving a lasting impact on the region. In the year 1492, Christopher Columbus made his first voyage that would change history forever. On an expedition funded by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, Columbus and his crew traveled across the Atlantic Ocean in hopes of landing in Asia. But when they landed, they were not in Asia, but the Bahamas. While in the Americas, Christopher Columbus and his crew discovered many things, such as indigenous people part of the Taino culture. He also discovered new plants, animals, and fruits that were native to the Americas, such as pineapples, guavas, avocados, and animals such as llamas, turkeys, and a variety of birds and iguanas. The most valuable resource that lay within the Americas included gold, silver, and other agricultural products like maize, potatoes, and tobacco. Resources like these later influenced global trade and colonization. Furthermore, Columbus's discovery of the Americas not only brought goods back to Europe, but it opened opportunities for new trade routes and European powers to establish colonies in the Americas and expand. It also made the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures easier between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. To add on, with this discovery, European powers such as Spain became extremely wealthy and one of the most powerful empires in the world because of the colonization and discovery of the Americas. In conclusion, Columbus's discovery of the Americas was a vital moment in history that led to the influences in economics and culture while also leading to new opportunities for exploration and trade.
Columbus's discoveries of the Americas had many long-lasting effects. For example, the influence these voyages had on the age of exploration. Columbus's discoveries led many explorers to start discovering the globe. Some of these adventurers include Ferdinand Magellan, who, using the information brought back from Columbus's voyages, became the first to circumnavigate the globe. Magellan died on the mission, but his work and discoveries allowed for many explorers to continue after him. Another voyager from that time was John Cabot, who was the first to travel over North America and found in Newfoundland. Francis Drake, who was yet another explorer, was one of the many adventurers influenced by Columbus. Drake was the first person to fully circumnavigate the globe and live to tell the tale. Along the way, Drake discovered and named countless territories. One of these places was San Francisco. These individuals are all part of a long list of many explorers who were instrumental into the age of exploration. Overall, Christopher Columbus's influence on the age of exploration cannot be overstated. His many journeys across the ocean to North America led the way for hundreds of navigators and explorers. These voyages shaped the map and the world as we see it today. These discoveries, for better or worse, paved the way for the colonization and founding of the New World.
Europe traded goods with the Americas. This was a huge turning point in the world because nobody had ever explored what was on the other side. Christopher Columbus traveled over to the Americas in 1942 and learned that the Americas had resources that Europe did not have. In Columbus's journal, He was writing about how he was the first brave man to travel across the large ocean, and it was not an easy journey. Columbus also noticed that the Americas had a lack of weapons, so it was easy to take over. Some of the worst things about the Columbian Exchange is that diseases were transported into Europe easily. This happened by rats getting on board the ships when they headed back to Europe. Then later on, when the slave trade became popular, they also brought back and forth diseases like malaria. They were also eventually able to trade with Africa. The Americans had way more plants than Europe, so when Columbus started the trade route, Europe got all these new plants they had never heard of before. And what goods were exchanged during the Columbian Exchange?
So the New World had a lot of different plant varieties than Europe had. So there were plants like avocados, tomatoes, potatoes, pineapples that were new for Europeans. And then Europe was bringing to the New World textiles and metals and things that were kind of more produced from the raw goods. But unfortunately, there were also some diseases that were transferred between Europe to the New World.
Christopher Columbus's voyages in the late 15th century were undeniably a turning point in European colonization efforts in the Americas. As shown in the documents from the Library of Congress, Columbus's expeditions influenced the course of history, opening up new opportunities for European powers seeking wealth, resources, and land. Inspired by Columbus's expeditions, European settlers established permanent settlements in the Americas, marking the beginning of a new era of colonization. One great example of this is Jamestown in Virginia. It was the first European colony in America, though it only existed due to Christopher Columbus's voyages in the first place. Colonization, like Jamestown, brought about significant changes for European and indigenous populations. European settlers used indigenous populations for labor and resources, leading to the spread, enslavement, and cultural devastation of the indigenous populations. And if you look back, it all traces back to the legacy of Christopher Columbus.
Globalization of Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus's globalization was due to his extravagant and unique ideas that led him to his final destination in the Americas. He spread his ideas in many different ways, like calling the Native Americans that he found on the Newfoundland Indians, because he thought he landed in India. His ideas structured many colonies. An example is like La Navidad. He used his Spanish building techniques that spread much farther than his own first colonies. Christopher Columbus wanted to spread his beliefs and faith to the Newfoundland for the reason he came over. He brought Christianity and the human modernization that Europe had been advancing for years. This is how he got his nickname, the Christ Bearer, because he was sent to spread the word of Christ and Christianity to unspoken lands, to the Native Americans, and try to get them over to Europe. Columbus used his ships to navigate through the Newfoundland. He came upon natives in canoes. This was so fascinating to him because people never thought of this idea, to carve out a tree that you can use as a transportation method. He was never a happy man, and harsh rain on the natives scarred them for many years. To this day, he captured and slayed them down for his own profits to bring back to Europe, which unfortunately he did not get much of. Christopher Columbus's globalization really spread within Americas.
Christopher Columbus's adventures were a turning point in history, generating a lot of diverse altercations throughout the globe. Columbus discovered the Americas, allowing the European countries to benefit from its resources. He also started the age of exploration that started a deeper connection between Europe and the Americas. Another impact was the Columbian Exchange, which was the exchange of plants, animals, and people between the New World and the Old. Columbus's journeys triggered European colonization of the Americas. This meant that European countries could claim land and take control, which greatly impacted the native people who lived there. Globalization helped with the spread of ideas between both continents and brought new cultures to new lands. Overall, Columbus's voyages changed the world by influencing how people traded and interacted across the globe. It also impacted how people lived throughout the